From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Stefania Bravo, and this is From the South. Paraguayan indigenous communities and farming organizations have reported that they are being removed from their land due to soil monoculture farming. They will meet with the Paraguayan government on Thursday to discuss a solution. Our correspondent in Asunción, Osvaldo Sayas, tells us more.
Displaced communities are now camping in the city centre of Asunción. Campesino and indigenous organisations will meet with the Paraguayan government to discuss land and agricultural issues. Farmers groups say that there is a crisis in the countryside due to monoculture farming. Businesses, mainly from Brazil, are planting soy indiscriminately, as it is the most valuable crop in Paraguay. These monocultures take land away from traditional farmers and indigenous communities, and social organisations are asking the government to take action on the issue. The Paraguayan constitution says that agricultural reforms should be dealt with at state level. There have been many complaints from indigenous farmers saying that they have been removed from their land. They are demanding a solution to this situation. The meeting between indigenous communities, farming organisations and the government will be held on Thursday morning.
Former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva will remain in prison. The President of the Supreme Court, Minister Dias Toffoli, has just annulled a decision to release detainees convicted in the second instance. Lula and the other people who are incarcerated who have not yet exhausted their appeals process will remain behind bars. And earlier, a Supreme Court judge ruled that all prisoners awaiting a judgment on their second appeal should be released. Lula's attorneys had called for his immediate release. The former president has been jailed since April 2018. The Guatemalan Ministry of Foreign Affairs has asked the United States to open an investigation into the death of Jacqueline Call. The 70-year-old migrant died while in custody of U.S. border agents. The Foreign Affairs Minister also said that the documentation necessary to repatriate Jacqueline's body is ready, and she will be returned to her family in Guatemala. And deported migrants have protested against U.S. migratory policies in Mexico City. Demonstrators from Mexico and Central America gathered in front of the U.S. Embassy into the Mexican capital. They protested against U.S. policy and demanded justice for migrants.
What is happening on the border of Tijuana gives me a feeling of solidarity. We know what it is to have to leave our countries for better opportunities, to be separated from our families and face difficult situations, such as the risk of deportation.
Donald Trump's family are migrants as well, so I don't understand why he's being so racist towards us. We only want to survive.
Shocking footage has been released from the U.S.-Mexico border where migrant children have been marked with numbers. Footage has emerged showing numbers written in black ink on the arms of children while their families have been stuck for weeks at a migrant shelter, Casa del Migrante. It is not yet known how and when the practice of tracking migrants numerically began. According to reports, it has become standard for all those seeking asylum at a number of ports of entry into the United States. And the United States has committed billions of dollars towards development in Mexico and Central America, according to the Mexican and U.S. governments. Both administrations said it is part of a plan to strengthen economic growth and curb migration in the region. The money will be allocated to existing aid programs, as well as new loans and private sector support.
We want to address the underlying causes of migration so that citizens can build better lives for themselves and their families at home.
Ecuador's National Assembly has approved several reforms to the communication law passed 5 years ago by the government of Rafael Correa. The reforms eliminated the articles that regulated the media as well as those on administrative and economic sanctions on media organizations. Reforms also touched on the protection against media attacks and the renewal of radio and TV frequencies. Opposition parties said this law didn't allow for freedom of expression. And staying in Ecuador, the government of Lenín Moreno has announced new economic measures, including raising gas prices as well as reducing wages and jobs. Our correspondent Denise Herrera in Quito tells us more.
Minister of Economy Richard Martinez, alongside Labor Minister Raúl Ledesma, and the Secretary of the President, Sebastián Roldán, stated that the cost of gasoline will rise from 1.48 to 1.85 per gallon. They stated the diesel for public transport and domestic use won't be modified and say that it won't affect taxis.
As President Lenin Moreno ordered, we've decided to cut the subsidy generated by dirty markets. This is inefficient and hampers our ability to fulfill our social obligations, such as revealing the real numbers. As we said, this was ordered by our president, so we've decided to reduce the subsidy for extra and eco-path fuel.
The National Assembly held its debate on the 2019 general budget. The budget includes the allocation of funding for education, health, universities, and a system to prevent violence against women. The Citizen Revolution movement rejected the budget. They expressed that with this bill, 2019 will be the year of austerity.
The most concerning announcement is the cut to gas subsidy. The fuel's price will increase by 46%, meaning that it will increase from $1.17 per gallon to $1.71. We must also consider the other prices. An increase of 19% in diesel shows that the government won't fulfill its plan, but instead it is applying neoliberal policies. The question is, are they deciding this on their own, or are they following the IMF's orders so that the country gets loans to finance the coming year?
Citizens are rejecting these measures.
This will affect everyone, because even the poorest, who may be using older vehicles, will have to pay more. The minister is a business owner. He won't be affected, but the people will.
I was expecting this due to the change in the country's politics. It is us, the citizens, who will be directly affected. The ones who work in the streets will feel the damage.
According to President Lenin Moreno, these measures will amount to a saving of $700 million, which will transfer to the National Treasury to be used to protect health care, pensions, public loans, and for debt relief for the middle class. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Ecuador.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Port workers in the Chilean city of Valparaíso have rejected a government proposal to end their strike, which has gone on for more than 30 days. The workers are demanding better working conditions. Our correspondent in Chile, Paola Dragnik, brings us up to date.
There are clashes happening right now between the port workers and security forces here in the city of Valparaíso. The port workers have rejected the government's proposal that would have brought their strike to an end and then immediately began to protest. Security forces set out to repress the demonstrations straight away. That's the story of what's been happening in the past few days. It doesn't look like this is going to come to an end anytime soon. There are more massive demonstrations planned for the afternoon, and universities have offered their support to the port workers by going on strike as well.
The prosecution in Argentina has requested 22 years in prison for social activist Milagros Sala. She's accused of criminal association. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Sabrina Roth, tells us more.
The prosecution has requested 22 years in prison for Milagros Sala on the grounds of criminal association. This is the third case opened against the social activist. It started on January 16 when Sala was arrested for participating in a protest even though the demonstration was peaceful. The prosecution says Milagros Sala is the head of a criminal association and has committed fraud and extortion against the state. However, we still need to wait for the plea made by the other parties, and of course by the defense, which rejects these accusations and will point out all of the irregularities that have occurred during this judicial process. It is estimated that it will take 2 weeks for all the pleas to be presented. After that, we will learn Milagros Sala's sentence. In this, the third judicial process she has had to face. She remains in detention.
We thank Sabrina for that report. Guatemalan President Jimmy Morales has given a 72-hour deadline to the International Commission Against Impunity to leave the country. There are 11 commission officials left who have been investigating corruption cases in the country. Earlier this year, Morales banned the head of the commission from entering the country, announcing that the commission mandate would not be renewed. This after the anti-corruption body launched a series of investigations against high-level officials. Morales and his family were part of multiple corruption investigations. Our correspondent in Guatemala City, Mario Rosales, has more on this story.
Social organizations and 2 lawyers in Guatemala have filed 3 complaints in the Constitutional Court against the decision made by President Jimmy Morales to expel 11 researchers from the International Commission Against Impunity. They say the decision of expelling them is not legal, given the accords between the Guatemalan state and the United Nations on the creation of the commission. They say that only the chief of the organization is entitled to withdraw the immunity of these researchers, so the Guatemalan state cannot decide by itself on this matter. Now, the Constitutional Court will have to decide on the issue. The government of President Jimmy Morales has had different disputes with the Commission over the past few years.
We thank Mario Rosales for that report. And now to Venezuela. The president of the National Constituent Assembly, Diosdado Cabello, has denied rumors that Russia planned to build a military base near Caracas.
I wish it were true. Not 1, but 2, 3, 4, 10. It's not the Russians. We are the ones who want this country. We are the patriots who are going to defend this country in good times and in bad times.
Mexico is often described as an intoxicating place for artists. The country's thriving creative scene has given rise to a new generation of artistic talent. However, these cultural practitioners now fear that proposed budget cuts will threaten the sector's viability and create a culture crisis.
Artists gather outside Congress to protest what they say is a cultural crisis. The 2019 budget proposes significant cuts in arts funding. The cultural practitioners want to meet with no less than the president of the Budget Commission.
We want a revision on the budget for culture. We are concerned about the cuts it has suffered.
A number of programs have been cut in various sectors. According to official sources, the government has said it wants to reduce the so-called superfluous expenses.
We understand there is a need of an austerity programs and that certain expenses and privileges should be deleted. But we are worried because there are 500 programs at risk.
Artists also lament that most of the cultural programs take place in the capital city, while provinces are left out.
Culture is basic and fundamental to understand our society, to understand our current issues and the effect they have on us, like social insecurity.
They say the full impact of the funding cut will be felt not only by practitioners, but the wider society.
The new government has said that economic development is not enough, that we also need to develop our souls, so then we need culture for that.
On December 15th, the public budget for 2019 was presented in Congress. Lawmakers have until December 31st to present any changes to the fiscal package and approve it.
The Bolivian president, Evo Morales, is celebrating 13 years in power. Thousands of supporters joined Morales in the city of Cochabamba to commemorate the day. In more than a decade, Bolivia has cut poverty almost to 40% and registers the 5th largest economic growth in Latin America. Morales is set to run for office once again.
The right wing come from dictators. We won with more than 50%. Then, in the last election, we won with more than 60%. And they call us dictator? The unity of the Bolivian people is democracy. It's a consensus. If we won with more than 50%, then with more than 60%. Then, brothers and sisters, in the coming years, we have to win by more than 70%. That's what we want.
Cuba's National Assembly said the proposed reform for the Constitution that would have allowed for same-sex marriage will be discussed in a family code. Our correspondent, Alien Fernandez, explains this and other reforms.
Cuba's State Secretary Homero Acosta has informed lawmakers on some of the results of the referendum that has been taking place over the past few months, where citizens have been given their thoughts on the text of a new constitution. He also announced close to 9 million Cubans took part in this process, and nearly 60% of the current constitution has been rewritten. Acosta asked lawmakers in charge of drafting the new constitution to consider the results of the referendum. He also mentioned some of the most controversial topics in the next text, among them Article 68, which proposed defining marriage as the union between two people, which would have opened the door of same-sex marriage. Acosta told lawmakers that this debate will be postponed and to not specify the subjects who are allowed to be married, but to leave the definition of marriage itself as a legal and social institution. He asked them to make a proposal for a family code, which will need to be debated by Parliament and then taken to a referendum. Acosta also talked about another important amendment, which is limiting presidents to 2 terms in office, and brought up demands by citizens to see an increase in wage for Republic workers. Other issues are set to be debated by lawmakers. As they study the draft of the new constitution, if this text is approved, citizens will take to the polls next year to either approve or reject the new constitution.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. A rally has been held in Yemen's capital Sana'a to support the ceasefire agreement in Hodeidah. Members of the Houthi movement chanted and danced in support of the ceasefire that started in the port city on Tuesday at midnight. This is the first truce between the Houthi rebels and the Saudi-backed Yemeni government in more than 2 years. And just 4 days ahead of the presidential election in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the governor of the capital, Kinshasa, has banned rallies, citing security reasons. Joint opposition party candidate Martin Fayulu was scheduled to hold a rally in the capital on Wednesday, but authorities prevented him from entering the city, while the party of another opposition candidate rejected the decision and said they would continue to campaign.
What is happening is that our president is blocked on the other side of the fence. The police are blocking his way. We don't need any mess. We just came to welcome our president and go with him.
Therefore, faced with an unfair decision, we, UDPS, say no. And no, we will never allow this decision. It is illegal. It violates our rights and freedoms. Therefore, we will follow the electoral calendar.
Uganda's border with the Democratic Republic of Congo remains on high alert as authorities increase their efforts to stop Ebola from entering. People crossing the border have to wash their hands and shoes in chlorinated water. They also have to have their temperature taken for signs of fever before they are allowed to cross into Uganda. More than 300 people have died from Ebola since the Democratic Republic of Congo declared a new outbreak in August.
We have established 6 screening points at the main point of entry called Mbondwe, where we do screening, and on a daily basis, on a very busy day, we go as far as 30 people screened. Of course, we have also established other screening points. You know, our border with the DRC is so porous, and we've managed to add another 5 screening points. Besides the main point of entry, which is in Mbondwe.
Yellowbus protests have now hit Taiwan. More on that and other stories from around the world.
Thousands of protesters wearing yellow vests have marched in front of Taiwan's presidential palace, calling for tax and judicial reforms. They're also calling on the government to stop using fines and taxation as a means of political persecution against anti-government organizations. Taiwan's Yellow Vest movement started in 2016, rallying against unfair taxation.
I'm coming here to protest the unjust tax system because the current tax system in Taiwan is very intransparent and unstable, and you can see lots of fraud in this tax system. So this caused lots of foreign companies retrieving their investment from Taiwan, and also lots of local companies cease operating, and that seriously impacts our working environments.
Quiet fell over the Yemeni port city of Hodeida as forces from both the Saudi-backed Yemeni government and Houthi rebels observed the UN-brokered ceasefire. The truce, which was hammered out after a week of peace talks in Sweden, will see all forces withdrawn from Hodeida in the coming month. They will be replaced by so-called local security forces. 9 crew members of a cargo ship who were stranded aboard their vessel have been brought to safety in Turkey. They were rescued using a zipline after heavy winds caused the vessel to run aground, just off of Istanbul's coastal district of Sile. Emergency workers are still trying to rescue 7 others.
Britain's Labour opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn has come under fire after he appeared to mouth the words "stupid woman" following an intense exchange with Prime Minister Theresa May. As Corbyn faces calls to apologize for his comments, an opposition spokesperson has said that what Corbyn actually muttered was "stupid people." The remark was captured by television cameras. Let's have a look.
I've got some advice for the right honourable gentleman. Look behind you. They're not impressed and neither's the country.
A French court has approved the takeover of the Escoval steelworks in northern France by a Franco-Belgian company, saving almost 300 jobs. Takeover will take place early next year, ending an almost year-long search for a buyer. The factory was at risk of closing down after the company owning the steel mill was liquidated in February 2018. Workers staged several protests through the year, calling on the government to save it. Now, the new owner also promised to create over 100 new jobs in the next 2 years. The first post-bailout budget has been approved by the Greek parliament. It includes some social measures and leaves out pension reduction. Our correspondent in Greece, Hibai Arbide, brings us the details.
Buenas tardes, saludos a toda nuestra audiencia. El Parlamento griego.
With 154 votes in favor, the 2019 budget has been approved by Parliament. All lawmakers from the Syriza government coalition voted in favor, as well as an independent member of Parliament and a Centre Union representative. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras said that this budget is a political success, as it does not include the pension cut that the Troika had decided on for 2019 and 2020. In August 2018, the Troika imposed a new fiscal adjustment to pensions for the 14th time. However, it has not been included in the budget because the creditors accepted the forecast set out by the Greek government, which said that the Greece economy will grow by 2.5% next year, with a GDP surplus of 3.6%, and that unemployment will drop from its current level of 18% to 16%. The opposition have said that this is the final budget to be presented by Tsipras and his government, as the right wing will win next year's elections.
We thank our correspondent for that report. New York is one of the richest cities in the world. However, 1 in every 5 citizens depend on food banks. Official statistics reveal that more than 1 million people are in need of this help.
From November 2013, the need for emergency food services has risen dramatically due to cuts to the nutritional assistance program known as SNAP.
People think about people that are hungry. You think about the people you see in the train, on the steps, and that's your association with that. But in reality, it's your cousin, it's your aunt, it's your own family, and they don't even tell you that they go to food pantries every single day just to eat and survive.
According to the latest report from the New York Food Bank, 80% of food banks and soup kitchens have seen an increase in the number of people in need in recent years.
When you can't give them food, you give them a little milk or bread. They'll never leave empty-handed.
The situation is most critical in the Bronx, where 31% of the population relies on the Nutritional Assistance Program, SNAP, that is. 22% in Brooklyn, 14% in Manhattan, and 13% in Queens and Staten Island. Even the police are conscious of the problem and are helping people in need.
You know, I'm trying to work with different food banks, so we did contact, there's a food bank here who serves, they give groceries out and they do serve food Tuesday to Friday from 9 to 1 and then from 2 to 4. So there are food banks in the neighborhood that are trying to help people and give them groceries and stuff like that, and also give services. So that's what they're trying to do here in this neighborhood because of everything that's going on.
According to the food bank, 54% of places offering food don't have enough provisions. even though their operating costs are low, and half of them work with volunteers. Official data reveals that 1.4 million New York citizens depend on food banks and soup kitchens.
Christmas decorations are lighting up Syria's capital, Damascus. The city is marking its first holiday season since the government regained control of most of the country. A 30-meter-high Christmas tree has been set up in the city center. The decorations are bringing light back to the capital after 7 years of civil war. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.